couple making out. When the lady's staring at me,
I don't know why.
as if I had two heads.
And only one eye.
But you know I shouldn't worry.
It's not my fault.
And I know that I sound crazy.
And confused.
But if you were here, then you would know
What to do?
There's a man who wants my mic.
He won't let go.
And this place is getting crazy.
Out of control.
And it's like I'm up here all alone. And you're too far away. And I know I couldn't stay. But I just can't wait to tell you. So I'm calling you on Colorado Blue. So I play another song.
This time.
But not a person sings along.
That's no surprise.
So I play the same song twice.
I don't know why.
But you know I shouldn't worry.
It's not my fault.
And it's like I'm up here all alone. All these heady times make me missing you. So I draw courage from the tap. I empty yet another glass, but it's not stout enough to smile. So it's your number that I dial. So I draw courage from the tap. I empty yet another glass,
Like before.
but it's not stout enough to smile.
Just to cry.
So it's your number that I dial.
Tear in my eyes.
And it's like I'm up here all alone. So I empty out my glass, and I thank you for the laughs. It's just what I needed to get through. Worth more than even in a Colorado.
And good evening, and welcome to another edition of Life is People. Well, that was Colorado Brew by tonight's guest, Gleewood Band. So without any further ado, how are you doing tonight, guys?
Good.
Awesome, man.
Good.
Well, as I said before we went live, I kind of that tune has been sort of taken on a new life of its own. I've been posting it through Minds, which is a great site, which, you know, I think you recommend as a social media site, but I've had a lot of kind of positive responses. So without further ado, the first question it begs is kind of tell me the story behind that, because I did mention it before, and I used to be in a band, so I kind of get it. But tell sort of maybe the people listening the kind of the inspiration behind that song.
Well, that's kind of a funny tune, man. You know, Colorado Brew, we get to play a lot of great breweries all over the state, you know. The whole microbrewery movement has kind of been parallel to the whole indie musician movement. And so we get to play a lot of great breweries all over the states. And of course, there's like 300 or 400 just in Colorado nowadays. So we were playing at this one in particular, And
we won't disclose the location.
yeah, so the gig was going all right, and without heeding the wisdom of my wife or our drummer at the time, I was approached by this cat who said he was a freestyle rapper, did a lot of like reggae rap and stuff. And, you know, sometimes we throw down grooves that kind of can, you know, jive with some of the reggae backbeats and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. Like, that sounds good. Come up. Because we're, you know, being on the road, it's always one of the great pleasures is jumping in with cats that you've never played with and experiencing other musicians and other artists on the road. So, you know, but one of the things that should have tipped me off is he said he was great. Which,
yeah, he's like, I'm really good.
And that should have tipped me off, but I didn't ask them, and I was like, you know what, come up on stage, let's do this.
And before you go any further, like it was kind of an earlier set, like a happy hour kind of set, because we had a show later on somewhere else that night. And so it's a family environment, like there's kids and families and stuff, and our content is very family friendly. And this guy gets up on stage, and me and the drummer are like, oh, okay, this could be cool. I mean, like Jhett said, we've played with a lot of really incredible musicians like that. You know, it happens when you're on the road, but this was one of those times when probably should have said no.
And so the guy grabs my microphone, and I have it set to where, you know, I can kind of walk away from the mic, you know, a few inches and still get plenty of volume. But he puts this thing right up to his mouth, and he starts like freestyle rapping, the worst stuff, dude, but not even tastefully approached at all.
And he couldn't sing, and he was just horribly off key, and
He
the
was
stuff he was talking about was the worst. I mean, parents were literally holding their hands over their kids' ears, and like we cleared out the bar.
All but a few stragglers, and we ended up, like, I was trying to snatch the microphone from this guy on stage. I ended up having to turn the PA off behind me entirely, killing the sound, and like literally shoving this guy off stage. And Callie was so mad. Me and Myles, we locked her in the girls' bathroom because she was like foaming at the mouth, man. And so she, I guess you called your sister while you were in there, right?
Yeah, I kind of had to cool off. I was pretty upset. So my sister ended up calling me while I was in there, and I was telling her what happened. And she thought it was the funniest thing. She didn't think it was awful. And I was like, no, it's so embarrassing and terrible. I can't believe it. And, but it kind of clicked in my head, like, okay, I think I'm going to be able to laugh about this night, probably tomorrow or maybe the next day. And it just sort of sparked the creative juices. So I came out with
Playing another one.
Hi guys, sorry.
hey.
No, sorry.
No, that's all right. You dropped out there completely.
Oh shoot, man.
Sorry, we didn't notice for a while.
Sorry, mid-story. So go on. You were just saying that you went up on stage. As the last bit I heard was this: you were about to go up on stage. You just, you know, Callie was really upset, and then you cut. So go on.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So we locked Callie in the girls' bathroom, and because she was super upset, and she called her sister while she was in there, and you know, because she was pissed off. She's like, I can't believe this is happening. You know, she needed somebody to vent to, and rather than you know, feeling her pain, she thought it was hilarious.
My sister, yeah.
You know, and so it kind of gave her a perspective on the song, you know.
Yeah, well, about the situation, I was like, okay, I guess I'll be able to laugh about this tomorrow, hopefully. And so the sarcasm of the song and the feeling that you get when you're in a bar and you're just watching all this stuff going on around you, and
you're almost just like the jukebox in the corner at that point, you know? And so it's just kind of that perspective, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I've got so many questions flooding through my mind. The first one I've got to ask you is, obviously, the guy who's playing before you, this person you're talking about. I mean, what was his reaction? Was he aware of what? I mean, did he have any kind of a self-awareness of what he was causing? And
no, I don't think so, man.
No, he was a little offbeat, just naturally. And then when he got up there, I think one reason why we named it Colorado Brew is because I think we all had a little too much beer that night. And I think he and his friends had quite a bit. And, you know, they were throwing money in our tip jar and being like, let him sing again. And we're like, no
way, man. Yeah.
No, he thought he was the bee's knees. He thought he was the best thing. He didn't even realize that people were leaving. He just loved being on the stage and singing about terrible stuff. And
it was hilarious.
It was pretty
funny. It's hilarious
then.
now.
Yeah, it wasn't funny then.
Well, this is the thing that kind of relates to what you were just saying there, Callie. I mean, those times when you feel like you are, you know, you're in that moment of confusion. As you quite eruditely said, it's those moments you're going to remember for the rest of your life. That's life on the road. And trust me, when you're not doing it anymore, you go and recount those stories over and over again. And every time you tell them, they become that little bit more fanciful. And by the time you're 20 years on, it's kind of like, you know, the whole venue was on fire and there was cars going off. But that's all part of the life, man. And that's the beauty of playing on the road. And that's the lifestyle you chose. Now, okay, I mean, people can go ahead. They can go ahead and they can read some of your background. But again, I'm fascinated to know really kind of where did it all really begin with you? Because, you know, I mean, I know you two met, and you know, maybe you want to allude to that. But where did your actual musical roots begin? Was that as a child? I mean, do you remember what was the sort of first sort of music you listened to? Was that your parents? Was it? I mean, what kind of really inspired you to go down this whole route?
You know, I find myself asking that question a lot, because I don't really know entirely. It's sort of, honestly, I feel like one of those people where music kind of chose me. I did come from a musical family. I did take piano lessons when I was a kid. You know, I wasn't very serious about it. I grew up on a ranch and out in a very, very far away rural area. So I didn't get to be very consistent with my music lessons, but my mom's an incredible singer. My dad is a great guitar player. And my sister's very musical, but I didn't really see that for myself. I saw myself doing entirely different things creatively. I've always been a creative person with art and storytelling and film, but I never thought music, honestly. It's totally one of those things that chose me. And when I met Jhett, I wasn't playing any music. I wasn't playing the bass. I wasn't singing. I wasn't doing anything. And we met about 7, almost 8 years ago now. And yeah, and you know, we were just kids, and he was going to open mics, and I was just being the good girlfriend and carrying his guitar and equipment and encouraging him, like, yeah, you can sing, you can play, you're great. And you know, people know what I'm talking about. And I could tell that Jhett had a lot of potential and everything, but I had no idea that within a few years' time I would be entirely swept into it. And then it just sort of snowballed for me personally. And I love it. It's become so much a part of me and my expression than I ever thought it would. I mean, I definitely feel like it chose me for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And you, Jhett?
You know, I was a late bloomer with music as well. I think a lot of my music came as a subcategory to the lifestyle and friends I was around. You know, here in the New Mexican Rockies, I was really immersed in the snowboard and skateboard culture, and you know, a lot of my friends were artists, and you know what people did, you know, at the end of the day was pulled out acoustic guitars and everybody jammed, you know, and I really wanted to be a part of that. My mom had a bookstore and tea house, and she put in a little stage and would host like black box theater, and so we had this idea to start an open mic. So I wanted to start an open mic for my friends. So I was the sound tech, and I never really intended to play. I just wanted to create a platform for all the people I was around, for them to express their music, because it's a pretty small town, you know. And I don't know, one thing led to another, and I really didn't start playing seriously until I was about 18. And then once I started playing, I mean, I really just got the bug bad. And then I met Callie shortly thereafter that. After I met Callie, I wrote my first song and performed it a few days later on that open mic stage. And I don't know, it just one thing led to another, and I, obsession kicked in, and thankfully she was really encouraging during those growing times, and we started writing songs shortly thereafter together, and one thing led to another, and we haven't been able to put it down since.
So can you remember, you just described it then, I mean, you obviously those days of, playing, just open mics and stuff, or even before, I mean, what kind of music, I mean, were you sort of playing? I mention this because, hey, I mean, I can, again, you've got the look of somebody who's into that, like you said, it doesn't, that's so much a surprise you into the skate thing. I mean, you look like Mike Muir out of Suicidal Tendency, that kind of look. So was that kind of the scene back then? Were you playing, the heavy sort of thrash stuff, or what was because again, you're in New Mexico, man, and it's kind of like you say, you're a bit like me, you're in the highlands and away from people. So what was the kind of scene? What were you playing back in the day?
We played a lot of almost like a lot of reggae oriented stuff, a lot of like Southern California style stuff. I was really into Jack Johnson and Ben Harper and Hawaiian guys like Pepper and Sublime. Like that was all the stuff that people jammed on, stuff that's heavy on the backbeat and just had a real groovy vibe, and then of course my friends weren't so much into it, but I was really into the rock and roll stuff, and always have been. Once I got my hands on late 60s rock and roll, I mean, that was a rabbit hole for me that I have yet to climb out of. But I think as far as the jam circles, that Southern California kind of reggae stuff was kind of the backbone of it all. But everybody spun off of it. We're really close to Texas, so we get a lot of string bands and banjos.
Yeah, and Colorado bluegrass scene. And
the Colorado bluegrass scene's big.
Coming from a kind of rural working area, there's a lot of just classic rock fans. So,
yeah,
and I grew up on entirely different music. I never was a country music fan, but my family was very into Western music, so traditional cowboy music. And still to this day, you can go out to the family ranch, and when they're all done working cows, they'll go pick up guitars or start telling stories around the fireplace, and so that's how I grew up on a lot of Western music. So like Marty Robbins and Johnny Cash, and all this kind of older kind of honky tonk and Western music. And then I also my mom was into theater and things, so I grew up with a lot of big band swing and jazz. And then coming from a family with roots from Scotland and Ireland, I listened to tons of Celtic music. So that was kind of my background, really. That was the music that if I ever thought I was going to make music, it would be more Celtic and classical in that way. So it was pretty different even though we come from a very small community. I mean, there's more cows in New Mexico than there are people, and our county is very large and there's very few people here, but we come from two totally different backgrounds. I mean, our first date was in, Converse skate shoes and cowboy boots. And, I had never really hung out with any skateboarders or snowboarders or hippies. That was a totally different thing. I mean, I made fun of those guys. That was just what I did. They'd show up to the rodeos or whatever and give them heck. And
it's true.
And still do. I'm the first one in my family to go off and marry someone from the other side. And so it was really interesting. And I guess that's kind of what you hear a little bit in our music now, especially the Western kind of country influence with the
Storytelling.
with a lot of the cowboy and, or, you know, a lot of the rock and roll and the reggae influence, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can definitely pick up on that. And I mean, the track we started this whole conversation with, Colorado Brew. I mean, I think that's got a lot of Hawaii in it and South sort of Sea stuff. You know, particularly the way that, you know, you're singing, Callie, that whole it's very, and that kind of leads, you know, which I'm not surprised by, man. I was, you know, when I kind of hear your kind of skateboarding background, I mean, it wasn't going to be too long before you were called to the land of Hawaii. Now, again, I mean, for someone who's obviously never been there, and I've only ever seen it maybe on Hawaii 5, you know, 105, whatever, but not much of it. So again, I mean, without sort of playing too much of the sort of stereotypes, dude, I mean, what's the waves there like? Because obviously people are going there, but I'd imagine there's really good waves there, but I'd imagine it's just rammed full of tourists. I say this because I lived down in Venezuela, and we'd had, I mean, I stayed on a beach up there for 18 months, and it was kind of like one of them. It was known as a really good beach, but not many surfers went there, because every other beach down almost like the whole of the top of South America was kind of almost every surfer would find there. They'd all turn up. You know, it was, hey, they're good people and stuff, but surfers always on that search for the edge. So, I mean, how did you find that experience in Hawaii, man?
You know, I had a blast, and you know, I learned a lot, and in a short amount of time. I guess in between when I first started playing and when I came back to New Mexico is when I really started playing a lot in Hawaii, and before I met Callie. And I had a good time over there. I had a lot of fun. I grew up homeschooled, and I had worked, you know, throughout my teenage years, and I wasn't ready to go to school, you know, go to university or college. So I was like, well, I've got a guitar, I've got a little cash set aside, I'm going to go somewhere cool, you know? So I thought, you know, I'd go over there and work and, you know, see how it all panned out. But I kind of moved towards one of the more local parts of the island on Oahu, which is the Big Island. There's a lot of people all over that island, but less people on the North Shore, which is where the big surf is. But see, they, as a haole, as they call it, you know, a white guy from the mainland, I had a really hard time finding work at all. I couldn't get hired, even to do like yard maintenance or anything. You know, they really don't take well to outsiders there, because they are trying to keep it their beach, you know, their island. And so, you know, I got roughed up a bit while I was there. But it was really good culturally for me to experience that. And, you know, and yeah, I learned how to surf while I was there, and, you know, learned how to play some of the local Hawaiian stuff. And, you know, I met some cool guys while they were there. A lot of very transient beings, you know, from all over the world ended up over there for the surf. And so it was a good time, man. But, you know, after a while, you know, my cash dried up. I was renting a little space under somebody's house, and you know, I decided to go back to the mainland and, you know, pick things back up and
Get in the snow.
Get back in the snow a little bit. I love the water. I love the beach culture, but you know, after I wasn't there for very long, maybe 7 months or so. I was ready to get back to the mainland for sure. But that feel, though, the way that they approach music has always stuck with me. You know, they have a real humble way and a very communal way of approaching music and jams, and it's really cool, man. And again, Jack Johnson is one of my big motivations as far as songwriters go. And I had no idea at the time. You know, Jack Johnson's from Hawaii, and I had no idea at the time. But I used to sit out on this rock. There's like concrete slab in this rock under this big tree out right on the beach, right on the North Shore. And I think it was a mango tree. And I used to learn Jack Johnson songs sitting out on that rock right on the beach. I mean, it was just beautiful. And later I found out that the house I was sitting in front of, you know, the beach is just covered with houses all along the shoreline, you know. But the house I always go out and sit in front of was like Jack Johnson's dad's house, and I'm pretty sure it's the same exact tree that's on the cover of his In Between Dreams album. So it was kind of funny, man. It was pretty wild for me to find that out, and surely somebody heard me at some point in time sitting out in his dad's place, you know, learning
like,
Jack
oh,
Johnson
brother.
songs.
Yeah.
Somebody probably thought I was a real stalker or something, you know. But it was cool, man.
And obviously, the reason I mention this is because I think one of the things that the great beauties of life, and that's one of the things I love about just hearing your experience, and I don't want to generalize too much, but I do speak a lot of Americans, and it's always amazing me to this day how many Americans I speak to that never leave their state, let alone their country. And it's you kind of expanded your boundaries, and I obviously want to talk to you about Hawaii. And obviously, you were saying earlier on, Callie, you got some sort of like Celtic connections, and this led into really what I wanted to ask you about when you came over to Ireland. But before I take that step, your Celtic connections, and again, are they Irish? Are they Scottish, Welsh? I mean, where can
Mostly, my family. I'm a fourth generation New Mexican, but so it's back there. But my grandparents traveled a whole lot. My grandmother was half Scottish, and my grandfather has Scottish on my mom's side and on my dad's side as well. And they traveled a whole lot. My grandfather was kind of a international ranch consultant, and he would travel the globe working with other people's cattle and cultures. They lived in South Africa, and they lived in Kenya, and they lived in Scotland, they lived in Costa Rica, and all over. So I have a lot of connections over there. So from a tiny child, I had longed to travel and see the world, which is rare in American culture, and especially ranch and cowboy culture, because you're married to the land and your animals, you can't leave, So I kind of always had a huge desire to leave. So whenever I was 4 years old, my family moved to Central America, and we lived in Belize. And so from a young age, I learned how to travel a lot and everything, and just stuck with me. And the first time I went over to Scotland to visit family, friends, and a trip was when I was 14, and then I couldn't stop after that. Then I knew that I absolutely love it over there. I feel most at home in Scotland, and so I've been back 5 times. So and that was before we've been playing music and stuff, and I would really love to play music over there. That would be amazing. So
we'll get there.
Yeah, and Ireland too. I do have Irish as well, and I do have some friends over there, family friends too. So it's cool. I just really love it, and it's just part of who I am, and I like being able to express that through our music. We have a couple songs that are very Celtic influenced, and we play with an Irish bouzouki live and on the album, and so that's kind of always just been a part of. And then the term Gleewood is an old medieval English term that we found in a translation of Beowulf, and it was just one of the instruments that the traveling bards used to use. So we have quite a few pretty deep Celtic connections with music, I would say.
Well, this begs my next question really, because as you know, we got sort of mutual friends in your part of the world, and they've been telling me for a long time, like, especially how I describe Scotland and where I live and stuff, and saying, oh man, you got to come down to New Reducio in New Mexico, because it's home from home. And I've always kind of from what you can sort of see, you can understand why I've always understood this, because I know why a lot of people, the Irish, and that they all kind of the Celts, they all landed up in New York, a majority of them. You can understand why they all made it down to that part of the world and left it, because this is the question I'm leading into, that for someone who's been to both places, I mean, how much do you feel there are similarities and differences between the Highlands of Scotland maybe and where you grew up down in New Mexico?
Yeah, there's on the surface, there really isn't much in common. It's very dry out here. We have hardly any water. Our annual rainfall for this area is 12 inches, which is not much at all. And we do have lots and lots of sunshine. This it's been rainy and foggy for 2 days, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, where's the sun? Freaking out, you know? And so it's very different, but I think what a lot of people find, what I found very intriguing about it is the Highlands has this very wild feel about it. You know, sure, there's more people there than there is here.
Wild and rebellious.
Yeah, there's kind of a wild and rebellious thing, which out here in the Badlands of the West, the Wild West, New Mexico, Arizona, there's that feeling as well.
Definitely.
Lots of wild and outlaw and rugged terrain, you know. And I think that's probably what the feeling that land gives you and that a country gives you, even with no people around. You can find that in other places, you know. And went to Ireland and it wasn't the same feeling. Went to England and it wasn't the same, you know, on the countryside and stuff. But in the Highlands of Scotland is definitely, there's definitely some kinship there between the land and that way. You know, there's
a mystique and a brutality to the landscape in both places that is just awesome.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
Indeed, and I mean, I'll sort of post it in the show notes to this when it goes out later on. But I have a painting called The Great Divide of Glencoe, and I don't know if you ever went to Glencoe, if it rings any bells to you, but there's a glen up in Scotland, and it's just exactly described what you just said there, Jhett. You know, it's got absolutely the majesty of what it is. You know, the rocks, the age. It makes you feel so humble when you're looking at these places, but interwoven with that is just the stories, and Glencoe in particular. And again, people go out and research. Don't take, you know, please, because I'm going to stumble across this, you know, in a very, very bad way. But you know, just 300 years ago, there was a family up there, and up came the English, and they were sent up there to sort of, you know, find out the cattle ranchers and who was stealing the cattle and stuff. Went up to the McDonald's, let them all in, and then overnight they killed them all. And it's a massacre of Glencoe, and it's that whole thing. You drive through it now, and you're like, wow, this hasn't really changed in 300, 400 years, 500 years, you know, and there's not much change, and you feel it. You feel the presence of, I don't want to get too metaphysical on this, but you feel that there's something there, like you said, the eeriness, which is very, very inspiring. And it's one of those things that, like you said, you don't see in many parts of the world. And I'm fascinated to what you said, that you can just, like you said, it's a very insightful thing you said about just traveling from Scotland to Ireland or Scotland to England, because it is completely different. There's an element there of just, like you said, not only the nature, but just something that's actually almost kind of in the air, in the feel of the place.
Absolutely. And here, you know, it's funny that you mentioned Glencoe. For you guys, we actually we live in a fifth wheel RV. That's where we are now, and it is actually parked in Glencoe, New Mexico. And there's a lot of Scottish history in this valley, but there was a lot of massacres all along this canyon here.
This Hondo Valley
and Glencoe area, because of the Mescalero Apaches are all from this area. So whenever the white settlers moved in, the Apaches were very brutal. And there's this really gorgeous drive. It's dry desert drive. But you drive from Ruidoso, New Mexico to Roswell. And Roswell, New Mexico, where the aliens are, is the flatland kind of place. And you can just, every time I take that drive, which is a lot, I'll look up at a hilltop, like a mesa, and I feel like I can see, you know, these natives on horseback looking over me, you know, and I feel a little on edge. And like, oh, I shouldn't be here. And then I look up again and they're gone, you know, and there's so much of that history and culture. I just recently found out that I have some Spanish blood in me, and it's just cool because this New Mexico is so rich with Spanish and native culture.
Yeah. And that, you know, we're so close to Mexico, but the Spaniards here, the old families in New Mexico don't claim, you know, a Mexican heritage at all. They claim, you know, their Spanish heritage, and it's totally different from, you know, even though Mexico's 2 hours away, you know, it's a totally different culture that they have, you know, because the Santa Fe Pueblo and all that was settled by the Spaniards, you know, in Albuquerque and all that a long time ago, you know, a long time ago for the U.S., not a long time ago for Scotland.
Yeah, or the UK.
Yeah.
No, I mean, one of the things again, I don't know whether you did, you know, this is part of your experience in Ireland, but one of the things that you do, you're talking about the Celtic part of the world where we live. There's very much a tradition, and it's still alive right now, that you walk into a bar and you can, if you've got an instrument on you, you know, literally you'll start playing and other people playing, and before you know it, the whole pub singing jigs and old Irish songs and stuff. Now, was that, again, I'm always really sort of careful when I have these conversations, because I don't want to sort of just elude a stereotype. And I know that's like, oh, the friendly Irish. No, I don't want to be that, because I want, you know, but that is the kind of truth I've experienced. So was that something that you experienced? And did you think that if you did do that, did you think you gained anything from it? That experience of, you know, going out there and just playing amongst the Irish people and the Celtic people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, it was very encouraging. It was.
We had a blast. We had a little travel guitar, and that's when we actually bought the Irish bouzouki. Was in Dublin. And
we played the music in a bunch of pubs. We'd bring my guitar in, and somebody would be there playing, and they'd invite me to play along, and we'd all start jamming.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen here.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No.
There's nowhere that's the way. You know, we've got designated nights for that sort of tomfoolery.
And it's very important that, you know, they perform their songs and you don't interfere, and, you know, I mean, it's not.
Or you can come to the open jam if you're, you know, so and so.
But even that, you gotta be careful not to step on toes, you know. But the musical culture, the way the Irish bring you in, and, you know,
really,
they get everybody involved, and with no amplification sometimes. I mean, it was really cool.
Yeah, we did that
really
a lot.
Inspiring. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we learned a lot. We learned, that was a big turning point. We both had restaurant jobs in town before we started playing music full time, and we went to Ireland and Scotland on this trip that we're talking about in April of 2012, which had been a couple times after that we'd been there, and we played music for like 3 weeks with all kinds of strangers and just jumped in, and we were really, still are, very young musicians, but it was encouraging for us, and that was kind of the pinnacle when we realized that's what we wanted to do. We got home and like, you cannot pay me enough to go wash those dishes right now, and we just decided to. It was the turning point for us.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely a big turning point, and it had a lot to do with the culture that's over there, and their musicality and how it's so inviting. You know, I mean, it was cool.
Well, do you know what fascinates me about that, and it's one of the things that fascinates me about, I think, just generally around the world, and I've been fortunate enough to sort of been around places, and particularly the Irish and stuff. And I think what it hits upon was, because it's a very old, ancient culture, and one of the things that, you know, up till very recently, again, I would talk about, you know, in British terms, but, you know, 600-700 years ago, there's a culture of tribes. It's called the Brian culture, which is basically just free tribes, almost like an anarchistic society going on. And the way they kept a lot of their traditions and values and everything in life was through songs. And that's what you see now in this reflection of people singing it. And you can actually go and, I mean, I can go to bars down here and hear old school, you know, songs that go back, you know, 700, 800 back. And I think it's fascinating, because I think in the age that we live in, where everything's so instant and so, you know, put things on Facebook, things on social media, that this could all be wiped away. All we're going to need is one meteorite to hit us all, and all this great pretense that we built up as a illusion around us all gets disappeared, and the things that are going to remain are going to be songs and stories. But nobody's concentrating on that, and I think there's a very interesting thing that you picked up upon, because that's something that the Irish, the Celts particularly, they love to have this whole warm welcoming in, and there's no better way of welcoming people and playing music. And it's one of the things that I found through the world. You don't have to be connected through language, you have to be connected through culture or any experience, but if you get an instrument out, you can get people that are completely divergent experiences, and they just share that moment. And that seems to be lost in this world of just produced music and shininess and getting things out and let's all be a star. And I think it's fascinating that you spoke upon that, because it seems to me a path that not many people go down anymore.
Absolutely. I think, there's a lot of things to be extremely thankful for with technology. It's made it possible for us to play and produce our music on our own and all of that. But something that it just cannot replace, that we absolutely love doing, which is why we tour so relentlessly, is not only because we like to travel, but because we like to play for people in person, live, in front of them, and exactly like as a musician, as bringing in music, it's intimidating. A lot of people are intimidated by it, but as soon as you can break the ice, you're playing for every kind of person in the room, and it doesn't matter what class or stage in life they are, they relate to it in some way. And I think that's absolutely incredible. We were just played a couple of duo shows, just Jhett and I, this weekend in El Paso, Texas, and Silver City, New Mexico, and Bisbee, Arizona. And then we came up and they were really great shows. And then we played a house concert, and it's just the being able to relate to people with music and bring stories to them and have them participate. I mean, we played for so many different kinds of people in the past 4 days that, if you were to line up their likes and interests and profiles on Facebook, you'd be like, those people wouldn't be in the same room.
Yeah, the filters. Yeah, there was no, there's no digital filters. Yeah.
So.
Exactly. This is the great bridge that creativity crosses, and that's why I think it's important to. And I've always thought this, that maybe we're in a paradigm moment. I think we are in a paradigm shift moment, but we've been unfortunate enough really to be born in two cultures where the musicians and the artists and the creative people are kind of relegated to the bottom of the pile. But if you look throughout history and time and culture, that's different. And I think this is where we're going to allude to, because as much as we've been living under this great illusion of everything else, the truth is that, as you just spoke upon, and it's as old as the hills themselves, people relate to human beings. And that is something that if we're going to go forward, I mean, I love technology. I'm all for it. I sit there and fly the flag for it week after week. But unless we have this human connection, there's no point, because we need this one-to-one and understanding what human beings are. And that's what I love what you'll speak to. And this is what I love about music and creativity. And that's why I hope that as we go forward, more people understand this, because we need to. Because I think it's really important right now that we need people to reach out and meet each other on a human level, away from these echo chambers, away from all these people just screaming at each other, and meet someone where we can all just share that experience. Because hey, I want to be real with this, man. We're, at the end of the day, whether you're the Queen of England or whether you're some Mexican sitting under a cactus tree, we all wake up in the morning, we eat, we sleep, we shit, we sleep. That's the truth of life. And it needs that's what us creative do. We point and we pick at and we stab at the illusions of mortality and people's ego. And I think it's necessary. And I think it's really interesting that you highlighted that very essence, and you're getting that experience back. And now, obviously, when you're playing that, because YouTube, and they can see that you'll go out and you'll play anywhere, and you spoke upon you playing in Ireland. What kind of actual feedback do you get? I mean, and obviously we started this whole conversation telling you about that really bad experience, but do you get a lot of people? I mean, what's your general feedback? Because the reason I say this is for two reasons. You're doing a kind of a music that's not fashionable, for want of a better word. And you have a very distinctive style, and I think it's a groove I love playing around with. But I imagine if I was to do that over here now, it'd be like it would kind of like fair enough. But so how do you find your just the day to day? Because you are touring excessively. I mean, how are you finding the experience?
Who wants to go first?
Go for it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting question. And I like what you've said so far about people and relating, and that's kind of really, it hits different people in so many different ways. You know, we've gotten feedback and related to people that, you know, I never would have thought I could have anything in common with, or really have a conversation with, just because I don't know anything about their culture or their type of person. And the same thing back at me. And, you know, we've gotten really good response and mixed responses. And like you said, we're kind of playing, hey, Rich.
Hey, Rich.
We're kind of playing, you know, folk rock, if you will, kind of that old balladeer stuff that's amplified and kind of bringing, there's a whole revival of this style of music, and it's bubbling beneath the surface of what is hip and what is fashionable in pop music. And it's really interesting to see and to be a part of, and it's on an indie level, but it's coming up through the surface. And so we are getting good response from our music. We've had wonderful shows, wonderful people who have opened up their homes, and we've stayed with them for weeks, and they've taken care of us. They've helped us fix our rig, our touring van is always breaking down. And we've had just incredible love and support from so many people. And
you know,
being the style of music it is, it's really, we have everybody from somebody 70 to 80 years old to 4 or 5 years old enjoying the music. And I mean, it's really broad.
But along with what you said earlier, how it's not really fashionable, that is true. You know, it doesn't hit everybody.
No,
you know, it's not what a lot of people are used to hearing, but that's okay. And like we were talking about in this digital world, you know, we're all craving that human relationship. And if what you're doing through your art is real and genuine to yourself, and you really feel passionately about it, then that emotion and that real, that something that gets through to people, you know. And you know, we've had a lot of people in the smaller shows that are like, well, you know, at first I thought it was kind of weird music, you know, but as you started playing and you told your stories, and you know, I found I really like that one song, you know. And yeah, people might not like all the songs, but something's going to reach out to somebody, because like you said earlier, we all have a few basic principles that, you know, every human has to experience in a 24-hour period, and something's bound to hit home, you know.
I think that's the biggest thing, like what you said, is we still, even with the band, try to, you know, maybe explain a song or tell a story to break the ice, get people involved, that we're not just trying to be up here to say, hey, look at me. It's about experiencing music together. But that's always the point. When the audience breathes a sigh of relief is kind of when we open our mouths and talk to them a little bit, you know, and tell a story. And then people are like, oh, okay. It's like this strange sigh of relief. Everybody can relax. I don't know. I'm not sure where this spirit of tenseness comes from with live music right now, where we are. But as soon as you get to know people and you let them know, like, hey, I'm a person just like you, let's have some fun, it just makes the whole night go so much better. I'm not really sure what that is, but it's good.
I think there's two things that you know, you can speak upon there. One is the very fact, and I think my experience in this thing we call life, I've seen it over and over again, that when you do give something of yourself that's real, as you said, people always love that, because we've been living it, like I said before, we're in two cultures that have just been told what we should like, what we should listen to. And I mean, I think it alludes to what you're saying with music. And the reason I say fashionable is it's almost like people having to retune their ear holes. And I think it's intrinsically in their souls, if you want, for want of a better word, or their hearts, for what, you know, it's in there, and they listen to it. And when they first hear it, it's kind of like, it's a bit like maybe it's, you know, using an analogy, it's a bit like, you know, some guy in Poland in the 70s seen a Coca-Cola bottle, and he's going, oh my God, it's real. I haven't seen this stuff. And I think it's absolutely what you're speaking upon, because I think that's one element of it, that people like that. And I think the other element of it is, and I think, again, it's this duality to this. We live in the times where, like I said, people aren't being real, and they're not speaking anything real, and they're not just having the bravery just to get up and say, hey, this is what it is. I'm not trying to do this to be a, you know, follow any wind. I'm just being myself as a human, standing up and saying, this is my experience. And that shines through more than ever, I think, in the days we live in. And that's why I see that reflection you're speaking upon going on over here in England as well. It's the people that, for want of a better word, aren't the shiny ones. And I've always thought this, that, you know, you can see this circle and this repeating pattern history, that in one paradigm, in one generation, can swap like that. And I think this is where we're at the brink of right now. I think we're at the end. I think we're at the end of these days of everything being shiny and produced. And I think we're just at the beginning of the days where people are craving for that real, whether it's in art, music, anything that's real, and from people standing up and being themselves. That's just my reflection. I don't know how you two feel about that.
I'm so excited what's going to happen to music over the next. Are you still there? Okay. I'm so excited about what's going to happen to music over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I think it'll take that long, but I mean, it's these fantastic songwriters and this original sound and rootsy sound is popping up all over the place, and they're gaining steam without major money or corporations behind them or record labels, and all of a sudden people's ears are being retuned and retrained, and
slowly but surely.
And there's bands like the Avett Brothers that are on top 40 charts. I mean, that are singing songs about, you know, human relationships and their experiences and spirituality and things that are very real to them. And they're sharing that with an audience in an organic way, and that's making it on top 40 charts. I mean, it's just, you know, when you've got a whole sea of very produced, very mechanized, very shiny, like you said, you know, music that's been put out that can be put in a box and has an image and a sound and a label, and here's what it is, you know. I think people are craving to tear that apart and hear what else is out there. And all of that music, all the artists that are all over the world are really, there's so many that are coming to the surface right now. And it's going to be really exciting to see what happens in the next few years with it all.
Exactly. And sure, you know, if I stayed in one place, if I just stayed here in this community and didn't leave, you would be able to catch a glimpse of that. But after having traveled over almost the majority of the states, you can really see it and feel it. And there's always 3 or 4 people that come up after a show and they're like, hey, I get what you guys are doing, you know, and they'll be in a band or they'll have other musicians and like kind of link up, and you hear the same, it's not the same sound, it's just a kindred spirit in a lot of audience and musicians.
The search for genuineness.
Yeah, it's good. It's really exciting.
It is really exciting, and again, this is just a reflection of what I've seen on my journey on this thing we call life. I mean, where I see the synergy, it reminds me of so much of the music I grew up with, because it was all words, you know, face to face, hand to hand. You know, someone gave you a little cassette, and you're like, you know, it was almost like a badge of honor. Like, this stuff isn't being played on BBC radio, or, you know, it isn't in the top of the pops, or it was almost that thing. It was a search for the real. And when you saw people come along, you're like, oh, whatever, you don't know. And this has never ever gone away, and it's just starting to happen now. And the great thing, this is why I'm really excited about it. I think we do live in, again, as much as I think we're living in the greatest of days, as I always put this call out, it's up to people like us to grab this opportunity. We can't just stand there and go, oh, we'll leave it to everybody else. That's the thing where us creative all got to step up and say, well, what can I do to participate in this? But generally, this is where I think it's going. I think really gives me optimism is if nothing else, the barriers are coming down, the connections where, you know, your music can be heard, and we can have this conversation, and, you know, the people over here can hear this, and it starts to get spread organically, human to human to human, and more platforms arise, and more connections, and more things are made easier. And I think it's really, I think for 20 years of being an artist and being a musician, I've never been more excited than we are right at this very pinnacle. And it's amazing because you get surrounded by these people that talk about, it's the most doomtastic times of the world and we're all going to go to hell and it's all, literally we've got 6 months to live and World War III's already kicked off. And you think, no, not really, man. The human condition hasn't changed a lot. And what the part of the human condition is, what we're just speaking upon, is they want something real. They want real things. They want that whole experience, because hey, let's be real about this. I mean, we've only got this short time on life, and if you're not getting that satisfaction on the radio or the television or in your media, you're still a human being. You're going to crave for that, and that's why people are searching for it, and that's why you see things, people searching, not only in music. I think just generally, I think there's a one of the things that's definitely been, I would say of the times that we live in, is that there's a great searching for an answer for something. There's a great, in that sense of an awakening. I don't know if that's something you reflect upon, you see in your part of the world, but I think it's just generally, I think it's not only with music and everything. I just think this is a general awakening, what people want to have, something just reflected some of its truth and not this whole echo chamber crap.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we were just talking about this last night, that we come from a deserty landscape, and even in the desert, something gorgeous and beautiful can bloom. A flower on a cactus, or even from the driest and the most desolate of areas can come this beautiful artwork, all natural and on its own. And we were talking about how from great adversity comes great art. A lot of times, I mean, whenever there's adverse situations and there's negativity and things, people are out there searching, and they're getting awakened to wanting to find something of themselves and of other people that's real and genuine. And I mean, for me personally, some of my darkest times is when I write some of the best songs, or create the best pieces of art. Like Colorado Brew, I was very mad and upset and thought, the owners of the bar were there, and I thought we were going to get a bad reputation as as an unprofessional band. All this stuff was going through my mind, and what came out were lyrics and how I related to that. And several of our songs have kind of really come from those dark times, and they're positive, lighthearted tunes. I mean, Colorado Brew isn't sad at all. It's fun. And it doesn't have to be sad stuff that comes from adversity, but it's good. It's a good time. I agree.
Well, on that creative process, I mean, do you find that you're, again, this is something I reflected in many conversations I've had, and I think it's been a very common one that many creative people I talk to, they find the creative is either, it's around the sleep moment. Is it when you wake up or you go to sleep? Is this the same with you? And I have to ask this because I think I'm starting to find a real pattern. There's something about sleep and that moment when we switch off that, our overactive imaginations or whatever, and the times of coming in and out of that experience are very part of the creative experience. And is that something that's been reflected in your experience of writing or being creative?
Sometimes, a lot of the seeds are planted for songs for us, or ideas are planted. In those times, in the mornings or right before you go to bed. But I feel like me and Callie's creative process involves a lot of elbow grease, and just straight up elbow grease. And I'd love to say that, I'm hit with these divine moments of inspiration, which I do believe is divine, because I believe my creativity is I'm just a filter for a higher power. That's where I believe my creativity comes from. But in order to really make that idea that maybe I had come to life, it just requires a lot of work, and there's no way around it. Hours in the car mulling over ideas, or hours hunched over the guitar, just trying things out. Yeah, I think maybe some of the seeds of an idea are in those moments, but I think elbow grease is really the main component for making those actually come to life.
Now that's the truth that isn't spoken enough, but that's exactly the real truth about creativity. That's what this reflects to what we've just been speaking upon, because we live in a culture, particularly our parts of the world, where the whole of the concept is you go on, you look pretty, you get your moment in the sun, you're made forever. And the real truth about life, and like, I don't care whether you're doing woodwork, whether you're doing art, whether you're doing music, it's those hours, it's those chipping away, it's the striving, it's the, you know, and people never see this stuff and they just see the end result and they think, oh, it's so easy. Or they go, you're some sort of genius. And then I love that you spoke that truth, because there's nothing more that frustrates me more when I meet creative people and they go, oh, well, no. I'm a special vehicle and it all poured through me. And you think, oh, come on, speak the truth, people. It's hard work. And I think if you don't reflect that truth, you're doing a disservice to the art that we do, the very thing of creativity, because that's the truth. And if you do this, it is rewarding. That's the point. If you do strive and you take the steps and you don't get disheartened, as you spoke right at the beginning of this, Callie, if you don't get disheartened and you do battle through it, that's where you start to find the progress. But if you too few musicians, how many musicians do you ever hear about this? How many creative people do you hear talking about it? They don't. They just go straight to the, oh no, I just, you know, and it's like, come on, you're not special. It's all hard work. And that's the truth.
It is. I think I've written 2 songs ever all in one. Like I just sat down and wrote a song, you know, and I walk away and I'm like, yeah, that was great. And then I come to it the next day and I'm like, oh, that was terrible. Yeah. I mean, there's some good ideas there, but then it took months and months of working on it before I refined it to something that I felt was worthy to share. But, you know, I think that's only happened twice where I even outlined an entire song in one sitting, you know?
Yeah.
No, one of the things that, again, I think one of the differences between me as an artist, maybe particularly my main theme, and a musician one, and I want to sort of put, you know, I see your thoughts and reflection on this. As an artist, I get to do a painting or a piece of work, and then like we just said, I put all the hours in, and then I give it away, and it's gone. This is one of the things where I honestly, it was one of my struggles about being in a band. I found it really hard to go night after night and play the same song, and it was like, oh, yeah, whatever. And these words became really hollow. And I've been to so many shows, and I've gone to these, and I feel it every time you go to a show, and you think, you know, you look around you, and there's, you know, people that saved all their, you know, month's wages to go and see this band, and you look at them and they're like, yeah, I'm now singing, you know, this tune for the 15th time this month, and I'm bored, sick of it. So, do you find that? And if you do, how do you overcome that? I mean, what's the process you do? Because it must be the worst thing in the world must be to start to really dislike your song. And that's a very easy path to go down, because, you know, hearing anything, it's like kind of mad. It's like a film. If I stuck you in a room and put on Colorado Brew for a week, you would never want to hear that ever again in your life. So how do you overcome that, from your angle, from your side?
Yeah, that can definitely happen. I think what is really neat or a blessing, or I don't know exactly what you want to call it, but Jhett and I are still very young, green musicians. You know, we have not achieved real great, I mean, I'm definitely not anywhere near like the top 50 bass player, you know, female bass player or a singer or anything. And so what's really cool about us is we started our musical lives on stage, which, you know, a lot of people are a little bit wiser or whatever you want to say, and they put a lot of hours in the practice room before they go up there. We didn't really do that. We learned a lot about performing and singing and technique and playing on stage in front of people or people. But what I'm trying to say is that as we play these songs, you know, we've been playing a lot of the same original material for a while, but they have changed so much because we as artists have changed. We've learned, we've actually been like, that's how I've wanted to sing this song for so long. That's how I wanted to play it. And because we play so much on stage live, we're very conscious of that. Because there have been a few songs where we definitely felt mechanical, and we've tried to, you know, kick it out of the set list or not play it for a while, and then we'll go back and we'll revisit it
and rewrite it. And it's a lot like what you said when you said, you know, as you get these stories from the road, and as you start retelling them over the years, all of a sudden they're this immaculate, crazy story that's totally blown out of proportion. But I think that's what has happened to a lot of our songs is, as we're growing musically and our musical knowledge is growing and our voices are expanding in range, we can revisit these songs and say, hey, I think we could take out this part and add this part. And so we're constantly kind of revising our music to accommodate our creative needs, our needs to grow. And so we can play the same song, but now I'm playing with this different effect, and I'm playing it electric.
Or I've changed the time from 4/4 to 6/8 or something.
Or whatever.
Or Jhett, we could be entirely honest and say it's because we've had 8 different drummers in the past 3 years, and they've all had extremely different music styles. We could be honest and say that it's been forced.
It has been forced. It has been forced. So we've had to relearn our songs a number of times.
All I gotta say is every best band I've ever known. The drummer one. What is it with drummers, man? It's like we used to in our band. We got to the point where there were so many drummers. We basically just bought a drum machine. We called him Des the drum machine, because at least he was reliable. He had no soul, no heart, but he was always reliable because drummers, man.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've worked with so many great musicians, though, that have really
pushed us.
And whether, like our first, we did start off as a duo at first, and just basically vocals and guitar, and very rudimentary. And then our first drummer was Myles Erdmann, who's featured on the first album, and he was a jazz drummer, an incredible jazz drummer. I mean, can play melody lines and all this ridiculous technical stuff on the drums. And what he did for us in his musical input, he was more of a mentor, especially for me as a bass player. Like, he always was pushing us. So much of where we've come as musicians, the credit belongs to Myles, because he was quite a bit older than us, and he had played with a lot of different bands and a lot of different styles of music. And so he was able to say, what if you tried this? What if you tried this with your song? And that really opened up our minds. And because, too, we came from such totally different listening styles as musicians together. We did not listen to the same kinds of music, Jhett and I, or Myles. And so meshing the different types of genres that we enjoyed was really part of trying to write different sounding stuff. And then each drummer, each musician, guitar players, fiddle players, everybody has really brought their own thing to Gleewood, whether it's challenging, whether it's adverse or meshing. It has constantly just shaped what we are.
But one of the things that we learned through that is not trying to snuff out somebody's natural feel for a song, even though it's very different from maybe the original version. Not snuffing that out, but letting that person, flow creatively on their own, and letting the song conform to that musician. You know what I mean? I don't know.
And we haven't had to change. What's been really cool is we haven't really had to change anything about our musical preferences or how we want to play something. It's just really broadened our horizons, opened our mind, opened our eyes, opened our ears to different ways of playing something. And and through the past couple of years, there's a few songs that we've learned and we've played a bunch of different ways. They're like, nope, we like it this way. This is how this song works. Let's just nail this way, And then other songs that have, gone through close to 10 different kinds of revisions. And then I really love performing. And you're talking about how, people go to see a band and you can just tell they're tired, they're bored, and they're just kind of there. And that happens still sometimes, plenty, especially when you're on tour, But I love to perform. And I love to make people laugh, and I love to see them and dancing and enjoying. So whatever I can do mentally and physically to push myself on stage, whether it's a tiny stage, a house concert, or a large stage, I will do it. I haven't gotten to backflips off of anything yet, But I might come to that at some point. But I'm always trying to up my game because I love that, you know.
So on the touring one, and obviously it's quite relevant because you're on the you've been doing loads of dates and gigs all over Christmas and New Year and stuff. And again, I mean, this begs the question of maybe you can bring Rich into this. I mean, tomorrow you're playing your hometown gigs. I mean, how that's always a strange one because I know from experience it's all right playing in front of strangers, but when you're playing your hometown gig, it's always that the chance that someone might turn up, and you always feel. I know I did. I always felt more. It's tougher to play in front of friends than it was in front of strangers. So, are you looking forward to playing a hometown gig tomorrow in this gig? I mean, how do you feel about playing back home?
Good. It's we are very.
Are you playing inside or outside? Curious.
I think inside, Rich, because I think they're gonna have I think there's gonna be a snowstorm up there, and yeah, I think so. Inside at the Spirit Bar, we'll see. They've kind of remodeled it, so there's a little bit more room up there. That's pretty fun. I
thought it was funny when you said you might resort to backflips. I've actually seen Callie do a backflip off a horse. She does it. She probably didn't mention it yet, but she's a bit of a trick rider.
yeah, that was funny. Wasn't very beautiful, but it was fun. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, like Rich and Deborah have seen a whole lot of our shows, and I think what's cool is we have a very forgiving audience that has seen us when I was too scared to sing out loud or too scared to play the bass, and to see our change and to kind of grow up with everybody and all the different musicians. It is because we really want to play our best, do our absolute best show in front of friends and family because we love and respect them so much, and we want them to know that their support
is going towards something. We're learning something because of all the people that support us at home. You know what I mean? Like we always really strive to show our hometown crowd that we're growing because of them, Yeah. I mean, so that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's exciting every time I see you all. I definitely see that evolution in a huge way. I mean, you guys aren't taking little steps. You're taking big steps every time I see you play. So,
man.
Cool. Good.
Thanks, dude.
Well, I was just going to say for people, obviously, because this has become a bit of a, you three all know where you're living, but for people like me who've never been to your part of the world, I mean, it's called Ski Apache, this gig. I'm more focused on, well, give me kind of a description of the venue, because you said it's going to be, it might be indoors or outdoors. I'm thinking, well, what kind of venue has the option to have indoors and outdoors going on? And then you're saying it's on, it's to do with snow. So paint me a picture of the venue itself and.
I guess that is confusing.
I don't know. Maybe Rich, do you have a way to describe Ski Apache?
It's beautiful. It's you have a nice view. If you go to the very top of the summit, you can actually see White Sands, where they do all the missile testing and the play around with depleted uranium and such. And I'm sure if you happen to be at the top of that summit when they lit up the first A bomb, that would have been a spectacular vantage point.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's great. They're good people, you mentioned the Apaches earlier, and it's a rough ride on either side any way you look at it. The Ski Apache is of course named after the Apache Indians, and the Apache there, they pretty much run the show. They man the lifts. They man the most everything inside of it, and it actually had a big revamp recently. We had something called the Little Bear Fire come through. I think it was 2012, and it wiped out 50,000 acres of forest land. And in fact, our home was very close, less than a mile away from getting consumed by the fire. And the insurance actually provided Ski Apache with new lifts. So they have like state-of-the-art lifts now that take you right to the summit really quick. And they're adding things like they have a zip line now. I think they're bragging something about it being one of the longest, and maybe it's just this area or something. I don't know.
I think it's the longest.
I don't know.
In America or something.
Where? What? I wanted to say that, but I'm not sure. Yeah, longest in America. But anyway, I think you get up to like 50, 60 miles an hour on your zip line. And, they're always trying to add a little something to it. To me, I kind of wish they would just put it like a magnificent hotel up there. You know,
Cool.
I think people should be able to just stay the night up there. But as it is, it closes. Everybody has to leave at the end of the day.
Yeah, I know.
And maybe they will at some point. But I think maybe there's still a certain part of the community of the Apaches that considers the area too sacred to build up there or something. I'm not sure. Or maybe it's just too expensive.
Yeah.
But Inn of the Mountain Gods is also, it's a casino that it belongs to the Apache Indians. And it's a pretty beautiful area too. They have a lake there. And you know, there's a lot going on here. So you got to come out, you know, and stay with us for a little while, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I don't know if you know this, but John Ferguson came and visited for about a week.
Oh.
So yeah.
Sweet.
Okay.
You know, yeah. I'm sorry, I threw a name in there that most everybody probably isn't familiar with, but John does a podcast about Made Safe and technology and choice. And
Oh, cool.
anyway, yeah, we kind of got to know John Ferguson through Made Safe, which is kind of what kicked off Life as People. And Tim's been carrying the torch of Life as People. And now you're over 200 episodes with artists from around the world. And it's incredible how much of a resource this can be for people to go back and just learn about the lives of artists around the world.
Yeah.
Well,
But I'd love to see a N99 Life as People gathering in Ritos, New Mexico, where we just all like bring in artists from around the world
Yeah.
and do something.
step by step,
That'd be sweet.
step by step, Rich.
Step by
As
step.
I always say,
Yeah.
Rich, step by step. Now, before we kind of, before we wrap this up, there's a couple of questions I really wanted to ask you two. One was relating around the album. Was how long did it take you to get the name? Because I know that's always a difficulty in many bands is getting the name of an album. And the artwork. I love the artwork. And I mean, who was behind the actual kind of the concept of the album? Who did the actual artwork?
We really were behind the concept of the artwork. We work on all of our artwork projects. We work really closely with the graphic designers. We worked with Miranda. What was her name?
Miranda Williams
Miranda
is a graphic designer from Las Cruces, and we met her at a show several years ago and really liked her work, but we weren't working on an album and couldn't really do anything at the time. So whenever we were talking about, we weren't really going to do a full-length album at first. We were just going to do a couple of EPs and, you know, whatever, but a lot of wonderful opportunities popped up here in our own community. We only had to travel an hour to record half the album in Roswell, and then the other half we recorded here in Ruidoso with the new studio with Richard Cagle. And, you know, it took 3 years to get this album out. All the songs were that elbow grease, and we ended up recording this album over the entire year of 2016. So it was kind of this play on sweet, sweet time in a sarcastic way. Time is not very sweet.
Yeah.
And
Felt like it took forever, man.
to get this out. Yeah. And that's kind of what spurred the idea of that album artwork, was us kind of being out here in the desert, happily waiting for this album to arrive. And so we had the idea and kind of image, and we were like, who should we get to do this? And we're like, oh, Miranda, remember her? We met her in Las Cruces at a show, and we hit her up, and she's like, yeah, I remember you guys. It was literally like 2 or 3 years ago that we met her. And she's like, oh, yeah, I can do that. And she just did it perfectly. I just can't believe how much she hand drew the skeletons and the scenery, you know, on her computer and everything. And I just can't believe how much she made it look like us. It was kind of
I know, uncanny.
yeah.
And she included a lot of famous mesas around New Mexico in the background. So you have one of the famous mesas by Chaco Canyon, and you have Shiprock and some others there, kind of prominent New Mexico mesas in the background.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, look, it's been a very insightful conversation, and I'm going to wrap this up because I'm heading towards 2:30 in the morning over here, man. But I want, as I mentioned before, I want to sort of finish this whole kind of conversation with, and hey, this is just me. I'm speaking just for myself. It's to me, it's my outstanding track on the whole album, and I have I have a thing, and I spoke about this many times, that when I particularly when I draw or I paint, I love to just put one tune on and loop it over and over again. It was almost like I was saying earlier on. I am that kind of mad person who, if you put me in a room for a week with Colorado Brew, I'll probably still come out and love it. I'm that kind of person. So I've had this, you know, the song that, a full ballad. I've had it played literally ever since I first heard it, and I don't know, it's kind of almost ingrained into my heart and my soul right now. And I just want to give you a quick reflection of it for me. I mean,
Please.
to me, it reminded me a lot of Ecclesiastes, the book in the Bible. There's a lot of it kind of really shone to that, and it was because it's my favorite book in the whole of the Bible. I love the whole, the philosophy of it all, and there was a lot of that reminded me, and the words were just absolutely. Well, like I say, they just cut my soul in two, really. And I thought it's, as I said before, it's really powerful, and the way the tune is, and I like a really long tune as well, and it's really built up and stuff. So, man, it's been it was one of my favourite tunes. So, while I am queuing this up, and I'm like I say, I'm going to finish this off. And Rich, it's been great to sort of catch up with you. I'm trying to divert this before. I mean, Rich, been catch up to you. It's been a while, my man, and so it's been
too long.
Too long, my friend, but it's been sort of great to sort of see tonight. But like I say, I'm going to wrap you up on this chat. But as I'm sort of queuing this up and that, maybe give me some of your reflections and your thoughts on this tune. And like I said, honestly, thank you very much for your time. As I always said, the door's always well open for you. And one day I'll get over to see you. And as I said before, next time I'd be great to see you play live over here. And I put this as a sincere call out. Like I said this sincerely, that if you are over this part of the world, man, I'll make sure we get you some gigs sorted out, and we get you some proper stuff sorted out, because I look forward to the day I get to see you play over this part of the world. So as much as I do get to go and see over New Mexico, but that is dependent on other things, and that's another conversation. I don't want to go back, but that's the Trump conversation, but that's another conversation for another time. So man, as I said before, while I do wrap this up with the full ballad, maybe give me some of your thoughts on it.
All right, cool. So Fall Ballad is inspired by one of the first songs I wrote. I only learned a few chords, and a few years prior, I had one of the last conversations with my grandfather before he passed away. We were sitting out on his front porch, and we were watching the leaves blow in the breeze, and it was the autumn season, so they were all changing colors and falling off the trees. And he wasn't a real deep guy. He was kind of a hard old man. But he kind of spoke in a parable about the changing of the seasons and how they're going to come and go in our lives. And he started reflecting about his own life and stories that I never heard about the war and all the phases that he'd been through. And
this was the first time you guys had really sat down and talked.
Yeah, it was one of the first times. I was about 16 years old. And so, we were just I was just kind of reveling at all the different phases of his life. And one of the things that he ended the conversation with was, not being afraid to turn the page of a new chapter in your life and a new season, because it's going to come and go whether you're ready for it or not. And I didn't know that was going to be one of the last conversations we were going to have, but it profoundly impacted me. And I always held those words in my heart. And as I grew older and I started reading more of the Bible, he didn't read much, but I found his words reflected in Ecclesiastes. And when I started learning, a few chords, one of my main motivations as a songwriter was to share that moment with my grandfather, with other people, because it affected me so much, and I wanted to share that moment with other people. And so that's a Fall Ballad.
I am falling down and I'm floating away from the only place that I ever found. Got the feeling that I ain't far from the ground. Well, the season came when I was blossoming, when that wind blew like hell before a drop of water ever fell. Never knew the story my life would tell. The day the rain finally came, the night before some family met their fate, and I learned to appreciate any water that came my way, for I knew at the time of all youth had slipped away. And as these seasons change across this mountain's landscape, it's time to weather in the sun, it's time to take refuge in the shade. But my son, do not be afraid to turn the page. That window, boy, and tell me what you see. How them golden leaves have replaced the green on them trees, so to reflect the time of you and me. And as time takes its toll upon the young and the old, in the heat of the July sun, you will learn to appreciate the cold, and the blanket that kept you warm will one day unfold. And when that day comes, when you're better for what you've become, do not be afraid or run, for there ain't nothing new under the sun. And mistakes only refine what you will become. I'm falling down and I'm floating away from the only place that I ever found. Got the feeling that I ain't far from the ground. Ain't it funny how I do not feel the ground?